Okay, so I guess we can start now. First of all, let me know if you guys can hear me properly, and then we can properly get started. Okay. That was a bit weird. But okay, it seems like people can hear me. Just confused myself there by having my own stream open listening to it. But anyway, yeah. Hello everyone, we are here. So yeah, I have a full document we can go over here as we talk about things. Obviously, like the description and stuff like that says, we have obviously SDCC 2025 information to go over. So we will be talking about Seven Havens, but we'll also be talking about the publishing announcements that happened at the publishing panel as well. Especially because I don't think a lot of people are aware that they happened. I think it is worth going over so we kind of know what we're about. But yeah, I think it's worth doing this because obviously I ended up doing a bunch of videos over the course of Comic-Con to cover the news as it gradually came out. Here at least we can kind of condense it all together and see where we're at. So yeah, I have the Seven Havens info, the little bit they gave us on Legend of Aang: The Last Airbender. But I guess we're going to start with publishing. That way we can kind of get through it, and then we can spend the time that we need on Seven Havens, which is important. So we'll start with Awakening of Roku. So we do have our new novel coming out. Of course, City of Echoes just came out, which is still pretty exciting. Still getting through my coverage on that. I will be doing a live stream discussion on City of Echoes. It's just it'll be in like a few weeks. I'm just giving more people time to actually read the book, especially because they come out over Comic-Con. It gets a little bit crazy where like what the focus is on. So that'll probably be more like a couple of weeks into August when I'll do the full stream going over City of Echoes. But we're here to talk about the second Roku novel, Awakening of Roku. Cover is really, really cool. I think it's super striking. We now know it is by the artist from the first one. We do know December 30th is the release date for the book, so now we know sort of roughly the idea of when they plan to release the books in the year. There will be the standard summer release, which I guess is going to be the Avatar Legacy book for the year, and then this December date. We'll see how it goes going forward. I guess they might try to have it a little bit earlier in the year going forward, but we'll see how it goes. Winter book for the Chronicles of the Avatar stuff going forward. So we assume, for instance, that probably this time next year we'll be talking about Karuk Book 1. That's not confirmed, but we highly think that is probably going to be the case. So we still don't have the like official description. Like when the listings get updated, we should have a couple of paragraphs long description of the book. So all we have to go off is the kind of one sentence description that Randy Rabai posted on Instagram. But we do get this really key information, which is that the book is set 3 years after the previous book. Roku, Guiato, and a new friend. I don't think we had that information coming out of just the panel. So this update here adds, obviously, they're going to have a teammate for the book, which is exciting. And yeah, the plot is to stop a mysterious illness from destroying the Northern Water Tribe's way of life. So seems like the book is going to be set in the Northern Water Tribe, which makes sense because this should be Roku moving on to the next stage of his Avatar training. He's, I'm guessing, done with his airbending training. Guiato certainly is. And so Team Avatar is going to move on to the situation in the Northern Water Tribe. I guess as maybe part of his introduction to the Northern Water Tribe to start his training there. But we will see what exactly happens with this. Still. Do you think a change from October to December was to provide more time to double check lore typos? I don't know, it's weird because the October date definitely comes across as being a little bit weird now that they've moved it on, because it's very close. Like that would be kind of weird if we get a book at the end of July and then one in like the middle of October or whatever it was. I'm not sure if that will be the plan going forward. That's pretty quick for full-on novels. I'm guessing that was just maybe the placeholder date was actually probably more the October date, but we'll see what happens with that as we go forward. I really don't think that's kind of what happened here. I know we tend to focus on those errors when they happen, but I do think it's just like a factor of the process and how it happens. Is just that they do miss things, unfortunately. They do happen. They shouldn't really happen, but they do. I get the impression that it's one of those things where, like, even if you gave them tons of extra time, some of this stuff kind of would still happen. Now, you asked the question, obviously, of like, if they just got anyone in the kind of hardcore group of fans to check the books ahead of time, like, you wouldn't see these errors, but they obviously don't want to do anything like that. So yeah, then we move on to this. So in terms of speculation, it's kind of difficult with this book to overly speculate on it when we don't have that much more information. Because the 3-year time skip means, like, we're going to be moving on quite a far away from some of the stuff set up from the first book. Like, are we doing any of the stuff that they did set up at the end there with like Ta Min, almost like held as like a political hostage in Omashu or whatever way it worked? I'm assuming we'll get updates on that, but like, is Sozin going to have a side plot in the book, given that we're guessing they can't really meet up again until Roku finishes his training? Or are we just laser focused on the Northern Water Tribe here? One note about this is that the listing did update the page count as well. 288 is what it's listed as. That would make this the shortest novel by, 20-ish pages, give or take. So that kind of maybe more speaks to the fact that this is more of a mission book in a way. It's the Avatar on a mission. They'll still make it important, because I think the significance of the book in terms of Roku's from the first book is just that he's going to have to deal with the water aspect of himself. Like, has he ever waterbent? Does he still have that block from the first book? Stuff like that. That sort of situation. Just over the death of Yasu. So he's going to have to, I suppose, deal with that here. We might see him maybe waterbend for the first time as part of kind of what's happening in this book. That's certainly a way to do it. I definitely read this as being a little bit spiritual in nature, which is kind of interesting. I thought Ta Min was serving as a diplomat. She was held in prison. I might have to look it up, but I'm pretty sure the idea was sort of that, like, it mentions that, what way do they word it? That, like, I think Sozin said, like, he hadn't heard anything from Ta Min in a while, even though he had her serving in Omashu as a kind of diplomat, kind of spy. And I forget how much they implied about, like, him assuming that maybe something has gone wrong there or not. But there was definitely a bit of a sense of some kind of political machinations going on, and that it maybe wasn't so simple for Ta Min as to kind of what exactly happened. But I may have the exact details of that slightly off. But there was definitely some sense of, like, Ta Min might be in a tricky situation there. So there's that. Oh yeah, and that's the other thing. Yeah, that's actually a good point. The description for the first book was actually kind of super misleading in a way. They purposefully made a decision to keep everything on the island, like, basically an absolute secret from the book. And I think that actually affected the way people saw the book going in. That, like, what are we doing here? It's just going to be, Earth Kingdom politics stuff, when that wasn't really a major plot point in the book. They brought it up briefly because the Earth Kingdom was, like, kind of involved in things, but, like, it really in the end wasn't. So they kind of hid what the actual book was about, and I thought that was a poor choice ultimately. So I don't know if they'll do the same thing again here. It feels like it's a little bit more straightforward. There might be some elements that they're kind of holding back, but that's the situation there. I'll open up the RPG material on the Roku Era Water Tribe, just to kind of highlight some context that we should probably go into here, because when they flesh out the Water Tribe in the book, some of this information will be used. I don't think all of it will be used, but based on the first book, they definitely used a little bit. And I think Randy Rabai even said at the con that the RPG is something that he goes off because this was in place when he came on to do the books. So there is some interesting stuff kind of going on here, of course. Where you see here, spirits in the polar regions grow agitated and aggressive. Do keep in mind the Roku Era RPG stuff is set towards the end of his training. Like after his training. So this sets it at like, I guess like 8 to 10 years after when the book will take place. But still, some of this stuff should be kind of at least relevant to a certain degree. The big things, of course, are we do know our Southern Water Tribe chief and our Northern Water Tribe chief from the era. I'm guessing because we're in the Northern Water Tribe, Skiri here is going to be more of the kind of notable character in this, that I'm guessing Roku will have to have diplomatic kind of relations with. So yeah, forceful chief of the Northern Water Tribe. He's convinced that the tribe should engage the conflicts of the day, seizing control of trade routes and imposing fees on those Fire Nation and Earth Kingdom ships traveling via open water. He's not against the Southern Water Tribe chief's proposals for more cooperation, but he believes the tribes need to aggressively protect what's theirs before seeking more international cooperation. So things aren't like crazy bad between the tribes in this era. So, things are a little bit better in that regard. So, that'll be fun to see that kind of course, get fleshed out. How hugely focused in the book he's actually going to be, but like, that's probably sort of the idea. There's definitely been some speculation that maybe the teammate that they have for the book, the friend they meet along the way, might be Magituk. Just because the character comes across as quite interesting because like she is a spirit bender, and if there is something crazy spiritual going on, that would be an interesting technique to have. There's no obvious mention in her kind of brief description here that she kind of knows Roku, so I'm guessing it probably is someone new, but it's like, hey, if this character gets mentioned, you saw the character first in the RPG. Teak, of course, is more Southern Water Tribe focused, but like, who knows? Maybe we might get a mention. I think that would actually be a really cool mention to get Teak. Takukak, we do expect probably to be mentioned in the book. Now, he's not going to be the friend, because we know, it actually says here, he initially refused to train Roku, believing that any Fire Nation subject would hold a higher loyalty to the Fire Nation than the people of the Four Nations. However, Roku refused to seek another instructor and eventually convinced Takukak of his devotion by living in the North for several years. So obviously by the time this book happens, I'm guessing this hasn't, he's not met that condition yet, but he still could meet him in this book, and that's kind of exciting that we might get some fleshing out of the character, given that I guess Roku effectively picks the person he wants to teach him, so he obviously I guess meets him and is impressed by him at some point, probably in this book. So he's going to be quite interesting, especially because he does have his own like legend NPC and stuff like that. That could be quite interesting. Other stuff, Sacred Island, I don't really expect to come up. This might still be relevant. The whole Northern Water Tribe, Northern Earth Kingdom conflict might be a thing that they at least set the stage for. Like, this will be bigger in years to come. That sort of idea. So then we also have Angered Spirits. Might be the case overall. But like, okay, cool. Major super chat here, so thank you to Oracle for the big super chat there. Hello Airspeed, my birthday was yesterday, so happy birthday. I was prepared to not get anything besides a quick acknowledgement, so key visual was over delivering for me. So yeah, this is referring to, I'll quickly do this just for context, so we're having the discussion here. So yeah, like this is the big thing, I suppose. I'll get into this when we talk about Seven Havens properly, but like, yeah, they did over deliver at Comic-Con this year. I put up some polls, and I very much got the impression most people lean towards I'm not expecting any news of significance coming out of Comic-Con outside of like publishing. So the fact that we got a press image, a promo image, a key visual for Seven Havens is huge. But more than that, like Mike and Brian were quite impressive, I think, over the course of the event by being quite open, talking about things, and it makes this event a kind of historical moment within the fan base to a certain degree, because we got our first Comic-Con reveal for Avatar Studios stuff. Like, we have the videos of people freaking out when they randomly showed this image out of nowhere. Now, of course, it's going to be a little bit different when we get to the cons in the future, and the description for the panel says there will be news. Like, it's an Avatar Studios panel. This was a anniversary panel that didn't mention news, but it was big enough to where they felt they had to deliver. So that's huge. That has to be, you know, regarded as like something that they absolutely delivered on. In that it is a funny thing over the course of the entire convention, where like you'd say the panel we didn't expect anything from was the one that actually like over delivered. I would say publishing came out relatively neutral, if not a little bit disappointing with the way some of the reveals went, with the lack of information. And then the merchandise panel, of course, we don't know what happened in most of it, which is a bit frustrating. But we will go back to talking about the RPG information, though I think we're mostly kind of done with it. Yeah, well, I think we definitely need more information. I'm really excited for the book to see like how it works and what they do. In that, just the idea that a big time skip is possible, and that it might not be a super direct sequel. I assume it will have elements where, yeah, Roku will be addressing stuff about, you know, water bending. I'm assuming the death of Yasu will continue to be addressed as we kind of go forward. What else? Guiato, I suppose we will address in the intervening kind of months and years how Guiato has dealt with the death of Malaya. That will be kind of pretty big to see kind of how things are going forward. Him being like a master, like will they cover any of the intervening material with them is kind of interesting. But I'm excited for this, definitely. Let's see, quick question. What's the inspiration for your name? I assume you mean my username, Airspeed Prime. If that's what you mean, my online username has always been, in recent years, it's always been Airspeed Prime, but before that, it was just Airspeed. And you'll note on some of my accounts, that's maybe my core underlying username is just Airspeed. That just came from the idea of like, I wanted to have an Avatar-related username that was kind of subtly Avatar without just being like the name of the characters type thing. So I went like, air's my favorite element, kind of nation, and then speed is the kind of thing I broadly associate as being kind of a thing with airbending. They're agile, they're quick, so air speed, and it makes for a nice kind of clean one word kind of username basically. The prime bit I added on later, and it's more of a kind of fandom history kind of element with me, where it's not really a thing much anymore, but you guys might know about my history with the Avatar fan site, avatarthelastairbender.online.com. And eventually I became the super moderator there, basically one of the admins on that site. I added the prime bit onto my name when I became the super moderator on that website, just as a bit of a kind of Transformers reference, which is another franchise I'm into. So that's kind of the explanation for my username, is just that it's subtly Avatar with the air speed, and then the prime bit's actually Transformers related with the whole, you know, Optimus Prime, but that it's not just Optimus Prime who has Prime, of course, because there's like Sentinel Prime and so on. But that's that. Earlier, that's the other thing. I think there was a question earlier on of like, is this book going to be eligible for like end of year content because it comes out 2 days from the end of the year? Yes, because technically it has a release date in 2025. It does mean it's going to delay a lot of my content, just because I have to read this book before properly getting a lot of that stuff out. Now, admittedly, I'll be able to make the video around this book, but it's still a little bit kind of frustrating. I'm assuming, based on previous years, someone will be able to maybe hook me up with like an early copy, maybe like a week or two beforehand, like I've got for the last few books. That will make it a lot easier. But yeah, it is a bit of an awkward one here in terms of the way I do my content, with it released so late in the year. So that's interesting. Did you ever see additional news about the Jazzwares panel for Comic-Con? No. I have not heard a single thing about the merchandise panel, except basically, I have it down here. But as far as I'm aware, they talked about this UA Magic card, and they showed the art for the normal version of the card. They went through very early on some of the basic merchandise stuff, like Nendoroid Zuko, first 4 figures Katara. Then they went into the Magic section, and then after that, we have no clue what happened. The reports that I've heard, I'm not sure how super accurate they are that because Magic promoted that they'd be at the panel, most of the line for people trying to get into the panel were people hoping to get free Magic cards, like free exclusive Magic cards. And I think people were saying that scalpers were kind of in there, not just like fans. And so I think the room ended up kind of being mostly Magic fans and scalpers trying to get the like exclusive cards. I heard one report, I'm not sure how accurate it is. Someone said that like they asked questions to give away the stuff, and people were getting very basic Avatar questions wrong, like who is the blind bandit? So that's not great. And I think the Jazzwares stuff just got lost in the middle of all that. Now, I don't know what exactly the case was there, because I have no idea if they actually posted any news, or if they just went over the stuff that we basically already know about with Jazzwares. It's a bit unclear to me, like, you know, did they show off like Wave 2 or something like that? Or did they just go over what Wave 1 is? But they had Wave 1 on the show floor. If you're in America, Target already seems to have some of the line. So it's a bit frustrating. So there's that. Let's see. They didn't know what the Blind Bandit was. Have you watched Eeyore's video on Kora? I probably did years ago, but like, you know, they're just the kind of well-known Kora hate videos, so like I don't really care too much about it. So like, you know, it's just representative of that certain era when they came out in. I don't really have anything to say about them necessarily, because again, it was quite a while ago. Would you ever get an Avatar tattoo? No, I don't really kind of have any desire to get a tattoo. But yeah, we'll go to the other publishing stuff, because I think we're done with Awakening of Roku. So yeah, exciting, but it is end of the year. Who is Eeyore? YouTuber who, at least in Avatar stuff, made a bunch of kind of very negative Kora Avatar videos. Well, we won't go into it here. It's going back like 10 years ago in the kind of Kora discourse stuff. But yeah, we did get some Kora news. Comics. Not that you'd know, really. Like, I've not seen these posted anywhere. If not for Obby on Twitter, who did the live tweeting of the panel, we wouldn't know any of these publishing announcements. It's actually really crazy the way that they did this. I get it. They framed this more as a sneak peek as to what's coming with the comics, rather than official reveals of books like with solicitations. But you can see here the next Kora one-shot comic is going to be about Kaia, specifically younger Kaia, exploring kind of her exploring the world. This is the tweet we have about it: young Kaia exploring the world on her own for the first time, and the title of this comic is going to be revealed soon. So, are we thinking Kaia alone? Probably not, but you know, we'll see what they do with it. Very cool. Now, we don't know a lot about it, but it looks to be a just straight up, like the entire comic is set in the past. I'm wondering straight away, will they have any sort of a framing device of like present day Kaia, telling the story to someone, and then we go into the backstory? Or is it just going to be we jump in with young Kaia, we end with young Kaia, and there's no like, you know, the Kaia that we kind of know? That will be interesting, because that would open the door to like, okay, we can tell stories kind of out of era to a certain degree, because this is technically going back into like the Aang era, basically. Now we don't know what exact age Kaia is at this point, because we say young Kaia, like, is it actually like very young Kaia, or is it like not as long ago as we thought? It's hard to say, but like it's going back, you know, at least a couple of decades, I assume. Now straight away, just from the visual, you can see here, looks like she's in maybe the desert. What did I miss? So far we've just done a little bit of discussion on Awakening of Roku from the publishing panel. And now we're going on to the comic stuff from the panel. We haven't properly talked about Seven Havens yet. I'll do that after I get through the publishing stuff. We can talk about the new series a little bit, Seven Havens, but yeah, publishing first. So yeah, it looks like she's in the desert, or a desert, in the middle of the skeleton of the bones of some giant animal, or I don't really know, giant monster. Very interesting. She's doing a little bit of water bending. You can see a bit of her kind of character design here. Looks cool. I'm very interested to see what they do with this. I did a little bit of research into sort of what we kind of know about kind of younger Kaia, that sort of thing. So yeah, yes, with younger Kaia, we basically have the idea, yeah, she has a connection to like the air side of her family, because she is somewhat like nomadic in nature. She of course has the kind of family it's like family conflict kind of going on, and that she was frustrated by the fact that Aang focused more on Tenzin. Of course, we have from like Turf Wars the idea that when she realized that she liked women, she came out to her family. Everyone was supportive, especially Aang. And it seemed like this happens prior to her going on her kind of exploration of the world. We also learned this detail that she went on a getaway with her first girlfriend, which I assume again is prior to the big kind of leaving to find herself exploration, which is kind of the next big thing that happens. So she kind of travels the world as a healer. So she has her own kind of nomad kind of arc, which is interesting, but there's also, it feels like, a little bit of mystery behind like the exact reasoning behind kind of maybe why she left for so long, those type of things. Because yeah, we have the detail that apparently she only kind of returned to the family after Aang died to like kind of comfort her mother, of course, because like Boommy and Tenzin were kind of like so busy doing kind of like other stuff. Like she kind of came back, and what's going on there. Of course, we know like she's into kind of like meditation. She also is one of the characters who mentions like auras, which is a very interesting point, because of course, Reckoning of Roku goes into what auras are a little bit more. That it's not just a sort of like made up thing. It is actually like a real thing, though it's unclear if Kaia actually like is super into this sort of stuff. And then this point I haven't maybe seen talked about that much outside of myself. The interesting point where Kaia is in the Fog of Lost Souls, and what she says, given that again, what the Fog of Souls does is it basically like almost like traps you in your own kind of deepest, darkest memories type thing. And she talks to her brothers, so it's Tenzin and Boommy. Who are you two? Kaia, we're your brothers. He says a little bit more after that, but this is the significant part. And then she says, interestingly, no, you're just a vision. I have no family. You can't tie me down. And it's like, oh, what's that? Because it's not just made up. It might be overemphasized by the Fog of Lost Souls, but it's something that is there kind of within her as kind of darkest kind of memories, moments type thing. This might tie into the way Tenzin describes her kind of nomadic part of her life as like flitting around the world, like trying to find herself, and also saying that she needed to settle down somewhere. So that like to a certain degree, there was a little bit of a thing within the family where they did feel that she was maybe away for a little bit like too long almost, or something like that. So it speaks to the idea of, depending on like what way they frame it, this might just be Kaia's side of the discussion. We might maybe see some of the other characters like discuss potentially how they felt when Kaia went away. But it's cool because it's fleshing out an ultimately mysterious part of the character that we don't know all that much about. And that's very exciting, and it opens the door to potentially do something equivalent for like Boommy, who also has some interesting stuff. Interestingly, the Boommy Fog of Lost Souls thing is kind of played up to a certain degree as being almost like a comedy thing, but he gets quite serious about it, about the cannibals. And because it's the Fog of Lost Souls, we have to assume he is not lying about that. So Boommy did encounter cannibals at some point, which is interesting. So maybe a Boommy horror kind of a thing is something that they could do. Let's see, on the topic of the Aang movie, I get that people are excited. The fandom doesn't really understand how important the movie is for the brand going forward. They have to nail this. Yep, they definitely do. Yeah, because it's a movie, it's got the box office thing. It is going to be key how they market it, how they get the information out there about it, and yeah, the fandom needs to go out there and support it, definitely. I do think some people are a little bit maybe over-focused on that right now when we're still kind of far away. And like, you know, the marketing right now potentially determines how it is in the future, when it's like, no. We'll talk about it when we get there in terms of the Comic-Con stuff, about maybe why they didn't say anything right now. But yeah, the movie is important because of the movie box office element, that sort of idea. But yeah, there's that. Again, until we have a proper description, there's not a lot to speculate on it. Creative team, we don't know who the creative team is. Based on prior information, it should be written by Kiku Hughes with art by Alex Monique, but they didn't say that at the event. I can't immediately look at this image and be like, for sure this is Alex Monique's art. What I will say, though, is that Alex Monique liked my post with my video going over the publishing panel. She also liked the post of Obi, who live tweeted the panel, the tweet where he talked about the announcement of this book. So that I sort of take to be a subtle way of her kind of being like, oh, my book's finally been announced, but wait, the Dark Horse aren't talking about it. The Avatar accounts aren't talking about it. Is it still a secret? Can I acknowledge this? Is it publicly out there? And that's the interesting situation, is that like you put the creative team in a weird position where like, is this publicly out there? Are we allowed to say that we're on the book? Like, unless something has happened behind the scenes, the creative team should be the same. Like, there's that. So that's that. And I don't know, like, the lack of detail, we did get the detail from the live tweeting that, like, they apparently rushed through a lot of these announcements, and they did keep the actual, like, reveals until, like, a little bit later on in the panel. So that's kind of frustrating, where, like, they maybe did have other stuff to say, but they just didn't for whatever reason, because there was issues in the room. I'm not really sure what was going on there. But yeah, it's certainly exciting. They said, the tweet says, yeah, title to be revealed soon, which the only thing I can interpret that as is that, okay, we're getting the reveal at New York Comic Con in October. Like, I don't think there's really that much of an opportunity that we just see listings go up for this before October. Maybe, but if it was going to go up this month, I can't see why they didn't just announce it here properly. And that then only really leaves, like, you know, September to do it. So I think it's going to be New York Comic Con. And we should get decent reporting from there, hopefully. So that's that. And then we move on to this. Very interesting. This is not an Avatar The Last Airbender one-shot comic. This is a new format that they also didn't go into a lot of detail on. But this is our comic miniseries. This is a 3-issue miniseries about the Kyoshi Warriors that is apparently set during the show. Do I have the tweet? Yeah. 3-issue miniseries about the Kyoshi Warriors during the show. Every warrior will be a character and have a name. And yeah, we got 2 slides of information on this. So here's the main image highlighting, of course, Suki as our leader. But we also have, I guess, Rie? I'm going to go with Rie. Mira, Aika, and Fume. So I guess this is the team she left Kyoshi Island with. I have some information on these kind of like continuity points with this that they're probably going to have to get into in a second, but we'll go over this in a second. Then there's more of a sketch overall of Suki as well as the faces of the characters here. Now, the interesting point is, for Avatar, what does this mean? For any other comic thing, this would be pretty clear-cut. This should just be 3 standard comic issues. But Avatar's never done that. Like, outside of Free Comic Book Day, we've never had, like, a single-issue comic where it's, like, a floppy comic. That, again, this also changes things because these issues, as far as I'm aware, won't just be available on Amazon to buy. You have to go to your comic book store to get them. They'll be collected later on into a graphic novel. But the original release will be digital and in comic book stores specifically. So it is a bit of a different thing in terms of like getting the stuff here. It also opens the door to like the issues should theoretically have multiple covers. Because it's now going into more of the comic book store thing rather than only having like an individual cover. We'll see how they do it in terms of like standard page count on a single issue should be like 22 pages. Depends on, I think, the publisher, how exactly they do that. But because it's Avatar, they might continue to do that slightly differently. They might be kind of bonus length comics. Because you're thinking about it like 3-issue miniseries. If they're 20 to 22 pages, that leaves like, that's a 60 to 66 page book, which is basically shorter than a one-shot comic. So it's like, are we just getting the one-shot comic in parts? But of course, it allows them to do something that they can't really do in the one-shot comics, which is to like really have like an ending for a month to go into the next one. They also don't say how long it is between issues, but I assume it's a month between issues. I'm interested how they go about this. My guess is that either they'll make it so that the 3 issues together probably add up to a one-shot, or they're slightly longer and we're getting into like the maybe 80-90 page territory overall. We just don't know. That's the big thing. They seem to emphasize that it is set during the show, so it's going to fill in some gaps. And I take this to be like kind of the focus will maybe be a little bit more on the others than Suki. But Suki will, of course, be in specific scenes because Suki as their leader is tied into their arcs. But we'll see how exactly it goes. So, and then, yeah, they didn't say anything about one-shot comics. They didn't say the creative team on this. I suppose, what are people's thoughts on this? I don't immediately think Peter Wortman when I see this, but I'm also kind of like, his art style has kind of like evolved a little bit as time has gone on. But it looks really, really clean here. And like, I think Peter Wortman's style is a little bit more like distinctly kind of his own. So I'm assuming it's probably not him, and this probably is a different creative team, maybe. And then there could be a situation where maybe different artists with Faith Aaron Hicks is writing. We just don't know just yet. And that's the frustrating part about the panel, is that like it hasn't been officially talked about, any of this stuff, and like not a lot of people know about it, and they just didn't say anything about the stuff either. Let's go into speculation. So straight away, let's try and follow throughout the series the Kyoshi Warriors, and do we see these characters in the background? This is from Warriors of Kyoshi, so this is from episode 4, Suki's debut. All the other Kyoshi Warriors are effectively like clones of each other, so it's kind of like there's 4 of them, but there's nothing distinct between them really here. And this is clearly at a point where, like, remember back in 104, they didn't even think Suki was going to come back as a character in episodes after this point, let alone the idea that many years down the road, the other characters would be named and have a bit of an arc kind of going on. So it's like, okay, it's you just accept that they're background Kyoshi Warrior characters. Then basically we go to the idea of the episode comes and goes. Suki's inspired by Sokka and Aang. Eventually she leaves the island. Now, they highlight that this character doesn't go. This is Gia, not Rie, Gia. She doesn't go with Suki. But these three go. But there are others. You can see there's like five of them down here. So there's at least, you know, the five we know about Suki and the other four from Suki alone. Now, are these characters three of these? I'm not sure. Because I think there's definitely an element of like, okay, we didn't plan this out in terms of, are the characters here the same as the ones here, as the same as the ones here? There's definitely a little bit of like, kind of a redesign is kind of going on here just to flesh them out. Suki then, of course, ends up in the kind of Serpent's Pass kind of era kind of situation where she's kind of guarding like Full Moon Bay, I think it is. And from the comic, of course, she meets up with her kind of the other Kyoshi Warrior, of course. This is obviously from the episode specifically. Now, it's noted, I think the main detail here is that, yeah, not just me, most of the other Kyoshi Warriors left as well. We're all here trying our best to help others. Now, this is kind of, I suppose, a clear point for the comic to maybe cover is like, oh yeah, while Suki is here, what are the others doing? Because Suki goes on her own with the group to kind of temporarily join Team Avatar. What are her teammates doing while this is happening? That's a clear point that the comic could explore. That's where Suki kind of ends off. And I guess after this, when she leaves Sokka at the end of that episode, I guess she goes back to her teammates. We then see the group again, now with an additional member who they immediately forget about at the end of the episode. So it's a bit of a goof in them, even within the episode there. But you can see it's Suki, and then there's 5 others this time out. A little bit more continuity beginning to come into play here, where they're a little bit more distinct. You can see their headdresses are all slightly different. Here's where you can maybe see it a little bit clearer that this is clearly what they're basing, I think, the characters that we have off. So you can see here, one of them has a bit of a kind of like cresting up design here in the corner. One of them is a bit more kind of like circular. Suki's, of course, one just has a kind of almost ninja headband type thing going on. And then one has like a bit of a swooping kind of thing going on, which is up here, basically what they do. So you can see here, ninja headband, the kind of almost like point or kind of like curving up design. We do have the kind of half circle, and then we have the kind of like almost like little horn kind of type thing. So these characters, I think, are clearly meant to be at the very least, the 4 teammates she has in Appa's Lost Days. But you can clearly see based on the hairstyles that the characters are like, they've basically been quite heavily redesigned here. I'm guessing just for the sake of the comic, making them a little bit more unique and stuff like that. That's what they're going for. So yeah, then there's this. Suki, of course, is then taken to the Boiling Rock because she's the leader. The others are taken to a different prison where they meet Ty Lee, setting up the finale where Ty Lee becomes a Kyoshi Warrior and she's with some of the other Kyoshi Warriors. So you can see here's our best like half circle kind of headband. Here's our ninja headband. But you can clearly see hairstyles and general design very different to the bit we see in the comic. We'll see what they're going to do here with this exactly, but you can see some ideas straight away here. Is like, while Suki's at Full Moon Bay, what are the others doing? What prison do the others get taken to? Showing them meeting Ty Lee for the first time actually could be a nice moment for Ty Lee as well, just to kind of highlight this big thing that is part of the trajectory of Ty Lee as a character, is that she joins this group effectively because she becomes close to the other girls. So that's interesting. So there's that. Do you think we'll get news about the movie at New York Comic Con? This is where it's tricky, because they said they'd be back at San Diego, but San Diego next year is going to be so close to the release of the movie that we'll have information already. It's all about like, okay, that will mark 1 year to go, because New York Comic Con is like early October, and the movie is also early October next year. So it's going to mark a year to go. will they do something at New York like equivalent to this? Like, that's the thing, is that my expectation, if they were to do something like that, is like that we basically get this. That my guess will be that like they officially give us something like this for the movie, maybe at New York Comic Con, if they're really open to communicating with us. But I'm not sure. I really am not sure, because New York is interesting in that they go there sometimes, but San Diego is much more of their focused on convention. It might still be like a tad early for them to be overly appearing at it, in the sense that like, if Mike and Brian are confirmed for whatever main panel they have, then probably we'll get something. If we don't see Mike and Brian attending New York Comic Con, then maybe not. But again, it's still going to be like a year to go. It's kind of so up in the air. So yeah, so straight away as we went through here, the big thing you can just see here is just that there is a bit of inconsistency even in the show with the designs of Suki's fellow Kyoshi warriors. So they're making an effort here to, I guess, bring it all together here with like, okay, these are their names attached to the specific different kind of headdresses that they have, and we'll get characterization properly on them as we go forward. So that's what they look like there. This is what they look like, I guess, out of uniform. It's tricky because I'm not sure how obviously any of these characters like look like these characters really. It's like, okay, this girl in the front here has the two bits of hair going down over her ears. There's a girl here, but like they're kind of bigger on her, but then she also kind of has it. And again, like they might just have different hairstyles as well. I don't know. They might just constantly change their hairstyles. Need to know more. I'm excited for it. Mainly because I think we need a new format. One-shot comics are cool, but they're very much like you read them, move on to the next one. I'm interested to see how potentially like 20 pages a month later, 20 pages a month later, 20 pages goes, where we're focused on a story for a couple of months. Regular content is, I think, something we need, and I'd like to see this be successful for Avatar so that we can maybe get regular miniseries going forward, and that like we could get maybe the next one could be a Kora miniseries, which I think is maybe the more needed stuff. And then, does it need to be 3 issues? Can we have a longer miniseries, like 6-issue miniseries? And then eventually, can we have an ongoing series? That's the big thing there. There's a lot of room to work with here, but it still is very much still expanding out the sort of like sandbox approach. Like this still doesn't feel like main event storytelling for the comics. Like we're still a little bit far away from that. And I think that is the main kind of frustration I would have coming out of this, is that it doesn't seem like, at least early days, that publishing is going to change that drastically as we go into Avatar Studios. Now, maybe that's where New York Comic Con will actually deliver some big stuff. Maybe there is some bigger plans in place, but it is just looking like one-shots and now a mini-series, which is kind of mostly just a slightly altered one-shot almost, depending on what the length is, basically. So there's that. We also have to talk about this. Very much a forgotten book, I think. I think a lot of fans don't know this is a book that's coming out this year. But they detailed it, I think, quite nicely at the panel here. And I'm actually really excited for this one. So I'm going to make sure when this comes out to do a lot of coverage on this one, because I think people need to know that this book exists. So yeah, Avatar Legends, Bending Academy Fire #1, Light It Up. It is a middle grade novel as far as we're aware. So it's basically a kid's novel, but it's still 144 pages as a book. And it's going to have some images in it, as we see. So the description we have here is, we'll meet the team, we'll go back to this in a second. Light It Up is discussed. It is sports manga inspiration for the book. It is set in a new era, the Zito era. This was later doubled down on and confirmed. So it's confirmed to be a Avatar Zito era book, as in the Avatar before Yang Chen. So we're going quite a bit back here. This is some of the only material that we know about with Zito, which is kind of exciting. And we even got the teaser that Zito himself is probably going to show up in the book, which is kind of exciting. Obviously, it's a bit of a sports manga focus, so it's about the National Championship Bending Tournament in the series. And the big thing is that this is going to be there's going to be a lot of books in this series. You can see based on the format here. This is Bending Academy Fire #1, so we're going to get a couple of Fire 2, Fire 3, I guess at least. But then we can switch to Bending Academy Earth #1 with a new group of characters, and so on, depending on what they want to do. This is the really exciting reveal that I think not a lot of people know about, is that they're doing some big stuff with like the kids novel. So let's do the intro here, meet the team. Apologies that the image isn't super great, but Adaki is our main character here. I think he's described to be 11 years old. We have Ji Young here, Era, and Soo Jun. And then the older kids are going to be the kind of villains of the book, because it's basically the 11-year-olds, I guess, going up against the like 14, 15, 16-year-olds in the tournament, which is exciting. So we have Chuan and Tehran. So that's going to be pretty exciting. And then you can see here, the designs for the characters are all really unique. Like Era, you'll notice there, missing an arm. That's interesting. But also that like she's wearing green. Ji Young here with the pink kind of outfit, kind of cool. They all look very unique and different. And it's an era that we don't know much about as well. So exciting. Because I think, at least to me, and maybe the chat disagrees, but like, I think we were all on the path of like, for sure, this is going to be set in the later Aang era, where there's like peace, like after the war, well after the war, or Kora era at some point. Like, surely they don't set this in like any of the other eras. And it feels like maybe a bit of a weird one to do during the 100-Year War era. So like, there's no way to do that. But then like Zito era, not even going for one of the eras that's already like established in the novels. It's the one before them. It's that's an exciting idea. So this is cool. Like it's obviously using the Avatar Legends titling as well, which is super cool. And yeah, this one will be quite exciting. The description for this is mostly just that the kids need to come together for the tournament. They want to be strong, but they kind of don't know how to be strong. It seems like they meet like the mentor who's like the best firebender on the island or whatever, and he teaches them in sort of unique ways. Looks like math might be involved, but we'll see. It should be fun overall. And it's something different. It's something very, very different. And I think like because this is a year where we're going to end it with City of Echoes, this, and Awakening Roku, we'll have quite a bit of variety overall. Okay, yeah, and then people asking about the Aang movie, which we'll get to in just a second. So, yeah, there's not too much to say about this. We're pretty much just waiting for this to come out, maybe some preview pages. Yeah, the shoulder spikes, old school shoulder spikes, but I guess they're new shoulder spikes in this era, but we'll see. And then, yeah, just before we get into the animated stuff from the first panel, we obviously got some Magic the Gathering news. And I think this is huge for Avatar. Like, this is a major merchandise thing. Actually, yeah, I'll quickly get up the lighted up stuff for anyone who doesn't know. So yeah, Lighted Up is out November 18th, interestingly. Keep in mind, there's also two versions of this. There's a hardcover, and then there's like a library binding hardcover. Not a lot of information on what exactly one is over the other. I guess one is just slightly more durable than the other, but it's the same book. Like, there's not really that much of a difference between the two. But yeah, just focus on this one overall. And then, yeah, Magic. This is going to be massive. They had a Final Fantasy set a few months back that was massive, sold like exceptionally well. They were just teasing the Spider-Man set relatively recently. Now Avatar is getting one of them. That's huge to be involved with, just as Magic is kind of going up and up and up. the fact that Avatar gets the next kind of IP-based set is hugely exciting. So here's the promo card that kind of prompted a lot of the scalpers to, I guess, take over the merchandise panel. Katara the Fearless. Cool art. I'm guessing the art is the exclusive part of this card. This card, the mechanical card, will be available in the normal set, probably with a different art. Because obviously this is a promo card, as you can see here. But cool. Ally is the focus here, triggering ally abilities twice. Looks cool. Looks to be sort of a character who facilitates your team avatar effects going off multiple times, which is exciting. And then, yeah, the UA card is especially exciting because they showed off the special borderless elemental frame for this card, versus this is the art that's going to be on the standard version of the card, as in like the main version of the card is going to have this art more done like this, where the art will just be kind of here and the rest of the border will be standard magic. But this is like one of the Avatar special editions that you can get, where you can see it has a lot of the Avatar design aesthetic going on, like the, I guess, nation or bending that the character has here. The kind of parchment style stuff here. Very cool. The big thing with this is that they're teasing major reveals for Avatar Magic the Gathering on August 12th. They're going to have a live stream that apparently will also involve the Braving the Elements team. So I'm guessing Dante and Janet are going to be revealing some of these cards, or they'll have a separate video on the Avatar YouTube channel that will also reveal some stuff. So they're really going all out with this to kind of appeal to Avatar fans, which is very exciting. We don't know what Waterbend does as an ability here, but of course, straight away, the Avatar set is going to have new mechanics, including themed mechanics, which is super, super exciting. Really big fan of the art here, and for anyone I think who's maybe on the outside with this, the amount of new Avatar art that we're going to get to see just with this set is going to be crazy. Because you'll note the card number on the UA, 338. So at the very least, and I think the Ang card's like 360 something, so there's going to be like 400 plus cards from all the stuff happening here. And there's going to be new art from so many different artists for like all the characters. There's mention that, like, you know, every episode will have something from it covered at some point. So this will be huge when it actually happens. And then, yeah, I agree with the advice in chat here. If you are looking to get some of this stuff when it goes out, you kind of have to jump on the pre-orders quickly. These IP-based sets are doing really well. Some of the stuff is selling out, like, immediately. So if you want it, you got to jump on it, I think, as soon as possible. Now, the Avatar stuff is kind of weird. Like, we'll see the proper reveal of it all. But, like, you know, the lack of commander decks, I think, takes out one of the most kind of big selling stuff. And they mostly seem to be leaning into, like, having a few more introductory products with the beginner box and the jumpstart boosters. So I think the more high-end items that might go quickly will be the bundles, and the bundle and the gift bundle. Especially if the gift bundle looks, like, really, really nice. Those two are probably the big ones that, like, if you want them, you got to get them probably quick. Otherwise, like, the other stuff seems like relatively, like, kind of normal as is. But again, I'll cover more on this as we go forward. So yeah, reveal on August 12th, and then it's coming out in November. The set's coming out in November. But yeah, let's finally get to the main event stuff. So I'll actually start with the movie stuff. So let's talk about this. We'll do Seven Havens last. They did mention the movie at the panel. Footage came out. They did actually talk about it. They put the logo up on screen. And basically what they said was, they have footage, as in they've seen footage. Brian literally talks about how nice it looks. He emphasizes that it looks like nothing else that's out there. So they're really getting across the idea that this is super high level animation, as in best in class type thing, that they're going to try to blow us away with just how impressive it actually looks, and that's cool to see. They said they can't show us anything, which I very much take to be, I know some people will interpret this as, oh, the movie's in trouble if they still can't show us anything from the movie, but I do think it's more of a situation where because it's a movie, because there's such importance placed on Paramount with their movies and box office and the marketing going the way they want it to, I think Paramount just really want the marketing done in a very specific way. So Mike and Brian are much more open to maybe decide when they show us stuff from Seven Havens, because it's the streaming show ultimately. Whereas with the movie, Paramount are more going to be deciding when we see stuff. That's my take on it, and that seems to line up with basically how Paramount do their movies. When they finally get going, they'll do a lot, but that's the way it is. Because again, remember, how far away is the movie? The movie is still 14 months away. It's over a year away. We're not even in October this year, and the movie's out in October next year. What movies do you ever see get like tons of information over a year beforehand? Not much. Like even Blue People Avatar, who have their new movie coming out, they're only just about getting like information and a trailer on their movie, and like they're out in December, I think it is. So that's the kind of interesting point there. So yeah, I think this is pretty, like, this is standard fare for, because it's a movie. We've never had this experience with an Avatar project, really, where it's like animated movie under Paramount. And I think just this panel alone clearly highlights the idea of, if they can show us a key image of the series that doesn't have a date in 2027, and the fact that they can't show us something from the movie, that to me just says they're being careful about the way they go about doing this. And it's noticeable, the idea that in terms of like leaks, so much more has leaked out about the series than has leaked out about this. The only proper leak that's come out about this, of course, is this. And even then, this image isn't a leak in the technical way that term is. Like, this was just an official photographer at the event mistakenly put this one online publicly when he wasn't meant to. Like, this was not like some sort of a shady thing where it leaked out via some crazy source. It was just like a photographer who was officially at the event just got it wrong, and that's why we saw that. I understand why people are worried, because it's been so long and this is the first project, and it's still like, why are you holding back from talking about it? But it's also like, they recently gave us the logo, they recently gave us a proper date, they're talking about it. Mike and Brian said that date. It's much more real than any previous mention before from like a press release or something like that. It's actually real now. I get it. Until we see an officially released visual for this, it's going to be a little bit frustrating, but we're still over a year away. Other than that, the only other information is just in the later IGN interview. They did confirm that Steven Yeun is confirmed as the voice of Zuko, to no surprise to anyone, or at least there shouldn't have been a surprise in my mind to anyone. For like the last year or so, if you followed my channel, you've known we've all been on the idea of who's Steven Yeun playing in the movie. He's not attached to any character. And then Dante Bosco's never been attached to the movie. It was pretty clear the way this was going to go. And if you actually watch the IGN interview, Mike and Brian effectively say the same thing. It's like, basically to the interview, they're like, who do you think he's playing? Like, he's the only actor attached to the movie. You don't know the character. And the only character you know is in the movie that doesn't have a voice actor, is Zuko. So, it's pretty clear, and they just announced it. I don't know why there was kind of such a delay on it to a certain degree. Maybe there's a slight sense of like they feel that like this is a bit of a star kind of casting thing, and they wanted to make a little bit of a separate big deal about this, or maybe the negotiations with him or something like that in terms of would they be able to get Steven Yeun for the character was maybe taking a little bit longer. But either way, they have him, it's confirmed. This lines up with all the other information we have about the movie where they've recast like all the other characters. I don't really have a problem with this. I understand, like, there's always going to be the nostalgia with Avatar, and why can't they keep all the voice actors and stuff like that? But clearly, it's been long enough. Of course, like, Zach Tyler Eisen is not a voice actor anymore. There was always going to be some of the characters they recast just because the adult versions of the characters don't fit the voices that the original actors can do. And I would actually say for Dante, I think the big thing that probably, in my opinion, ruled him out was just that because he's Iroh in Korra, I think that casting probably ruled him out. Because some of the reception to that was a little bit like, really? The exact same voice for like a 37-year-old character or whatever? There was a bit of a like, no real attempt to change the voice whatsoever. Okay. And as in, like, it would have been then weird if adult Zuko has also the exact same voice overall. Not to mention, the characters have already been recast for Korra in their much older counterparts. I guess they're trying to do kind of transitional voice actors that fit the gap between their younger selves and the older versions of themselves. So that's fine. And look, you're always going to get that reaction when this happens. You're always going to be like, Dante Bosco's not coming back for the movie. That will upset people. But he was never officially attached. And you don't have to worry about like him because he's always going to be tied to Avatar. He's part of the Avatar family kind of basically forever because he's like one of the main hosts for the franchise with Janet Varney for a lot of their big kind of things, of course. Not to mention, like, even the fact that the 20th anniversary panel, they had basically everyone. Even Mae Whitman, I suppose, would have been there if not for some scheduling issues. So, like, the cast is kind of staying together. They're really making that kind of big deal. They're not, like, completely, like, absolutely abandoning them, but they're trying to be kind of, I suppose, have a specific approach to how they do their casting for kind of upcoming kind of movies and stuff like that. I think there was even some reports that like people who talked to Janet at some of the signings kind of mentioned that like she might be doing like voice direction work on some of the projects, which is kind of interesting. So kind of involving her on that side of things. Will Janet Varney stay as the voice for Korra? I'm pretty sure she has come out publicly and said that like she kind of, I don't know what was the exact wording on it, that like she doesn't want to do it anymore or is perfectly fine with stepping down for someone else to come in and voice Korra again. She said that at a convention at some point, and I think it's the same thing kind of as we go forward. I'm guessing the Korra we'll see as like a past life potentially in Seven Havens will be an older version to a certain degree, and they might switch that up. Stuff like that. And I don't know, maybe it's just me as well with the voice actors. Like, I have a major respect for them, for the work that they did on the series, but, like, I don't have that, like, obsession with the idea that, like, if they change it, like, it's inherently kind of bad. Because, look, we don't know the adult versions of the characters. They've done casting work to get the right voice actors, I suppose, for the characters, and we'll see how it is. I think this is the better approach to, I think, try and make the movie a success rather than just fully relying on, like, all the voice actors are back, even though are they actually the right ones for the roles of the adult characters? So yeah, there's that. And yeah, they're keeping them on as basically kind of like brand ambassadors effectively, so that's fine. But that's basically everything on the movie. Like, there was other stuff like that later on. Like, they said that Republic City, they confirmed Republic City is like a big location in the movie. We technically didn't know for sure that was going to be the case, but like it was kind of obvious. But they did confirm that in the interview, so we are going to get to see Republic City in the movie, which is cool. Just to know that. I'd be surprised if the core of the movie is all about Republic City, but we actually don't know what the plot is. I'm assuming it's not the main plot because Lost Realm is like the other, like, was the other rumored title and stuff like that, Hidden Kingdom. So it's leaning in that sort of direction, and that doesn't really fit Republic City. Could you do a speculation video about Avatar Studios and what other projects besides the show and the movie, and what projects they could do in the future? I think I've done stuff like that before. Like, just to be clear, like, what we know right now is, of course, first movie is Aang movie. First show is Seven Havens. They've already confirmed they're doing 2 other movies. Officially, we don't know what those movies are about. So they could be sequels to a certain degree to the Aang movie, or they could be switching it up quite heavily. I think we've heard rumored reports kind of either way on that. We just don't know. There is also like some stuff that kind of came out maybe suggesting that the next series might be like air related in some way, whether that's another air avatar or something like that. But also the way Brian is talking about it, whatever he's working on kind of right now, which I assume is project like 3, 4, or 5, they're doing a little bit of different stuff with the voices in, not the voices, with the art style of whatever series he's working on. Like, he's a bit more heavily involved on the art on one of the projects, and that's kind of interesting. As far as like what I want, like, I'm interested to see how they do this, because I think what would probably work out best for the franchise is probably if they did like Aang movie 2, Aang movie 3, and they just kind of devote the movies to the part of the franchise that everyone knows, and that allows like all the other projects to be kind of unrelated to Avatar The Last Airbender, and they can be the really creative projects, while the really well-known Aang stuff is the movie stuff. That's probably the kind of like business approach that will probably work out best for the movies. But we also want to see a bit of variety, so like, might they do a Kora movie at some point? That'd be kind of cool. I believe one of the rumors was potentially like, what if they do like a Seven Havens movie to maybe like round off the series? Like that's one way to do it if everything works out really well. Obviously the very early rumors that I'm not sure how much substance there is anymore of like, is one of them like a Zuko specific movie, more focused on the plots that relate to him? That's something that could definitely work. That would get people excited. And to going out to the cinema, certainly. That's a way to kind of do a sort of sequel to this movie, but it's just we're focusing on one of the other main characters rather than Aang. That's cool. But then, yeah, will they do like a Kyoshi movie? Hard to say. We have to kind of see how it goes. Like, but at the same time, I also wouldn't be surprised if like we maybe do start to hear things about like what the plans are for the stuff after kind of this as well. One-shot movies, yeah, that's the big thing, because we don't know too much about the plot of this movie, of course, but the idea is just like, yeah, what do we want out of this movie? Like, it's going to be 90 minutes basically, like plus or minus maybe 5 minutes. That's pretty much locked in the way the movie's going to be. Are they going to give us everything we want in that? And so would it be in their best interest to immediately ahead of time plan for a sequel, knowing that people are probably going to want more Aang coming out of this? Or do they just do it like, no, it's one and done, this is it. This is what we wanted to do, this is the story we wanted to tell. I kind of, in my head right now, struggle to imagine what they do in 90 minutes to just completely satisfy us and just, yeah, we're fine with the other movies being kind of unrelated to a certain degree, but we'll see what happens. Animation studio for the movie is a mix of main studio is Flying Bark Animation, but of course we heard a few months back that Studio Mir have come on board as well. Not really sure what the exact dynamic there is in terms of like, are they just doing general assistance? Is it like emergency assistance to get the movie out on time? But that's the situation there. Let's see. I thought Zuko movie was next. Not confirmed. Like, why do you, like, the obvious question is, why do you seem to know the next movie is a Zuko movie? And the idea is, where you're sourcing that from is an Avatar News rumored, like, scoop information from, like, 2021, 2022. So we're talking about, like, old rumored information when we talk about the second movie being locked in as the Zuko movie. Could still be the case, but officially we don't know that that's the case. And again, remember, like a lot of what we know about this stuff is that actually with Avatar Studios, a lot of like 2021 and 2022 was pretty much just setup work behind the scenes. Like just building up staff to actually have people working in Avatar Studios, deciding what the projects actually are, and then actually preparing the early stages of the project. So, you know, a lot of those rumors that came out in the earlier years of Avatar Studios are very much like, they could have just been, yeah, this was an idea that was floated around. Did they continue on with it? We don't know. So this is the importance of like sourcing information properly. This is why I think a lot of people got themselves into a situation where they thought Dante Bosco was involved in the movie, because again, the early rumored stuff was that he was locked in to remain on the movie. But officially, that was never the case. Yeah, and even then, like some of the stuff was maybe a little bit misinterpreted as well. That like a lot of the Kyoshi rumors of this being one of the big projects, at least some of that ended up actually just being that they were casting for like voice actors for the Avatar Generations Kyoshi update. It wasn't like at all related to one of the Avatar Studios projects. So you have to be kind of careful with the rumored information, because, you know, my source tells me, like, who is your source? And do they actually know anything, and how substantial is it? Like, when did it come from? What era does it come from? In terms of stuff like this. And the idea is, we haven't had a kind of deeper rumor like that about what's happening at Avatar Studios in a long time. When you really break it down, is the Kora movie still happening? Same situation. The Kora situation was just a rumor that we eventually got. That it was like, I think the Avatar News report was like that. First movie was going to be Kyoshi, then it was going to be Zuko, then it was going to be Kora. Then, of course, they announced the first movie and it was Aang, and then it was changed to like Aang, Zuko, Kora, or Kyoshi. The idea is that none of that information, I think, is particularly kind of relevant right now, at least in terms of rumors that I've seen. And again, officially, we don't know anything about that. Otherwise, like, I think you'd see people freaking out about it. Like, if we already knew what the second movie actually was. It might be the case. Zuko movie being second, I think, actually makes a lot of sense. And the same goes for, a lot of those stuff. Like, is the Chibi preschool show still happening? And the idea is like, what Chibi preschool show? Is this that? Is this what that maybe rumor evolved into? This hasn't been announced yet for the YouTube channel, the Chibi mini shorts. I thought they'd announce it, but they didn't. This might be something for New York Comic Con, actually, depending on what's happening. We just don't know. That might be what one of the future projects is. But again, it's a rumor from an early era of Avatar Studios when they were still throwing ideas around. You know, it's similar to the whole Avatar was originally going to have a book 4 situation, and the idea of some people on staff would say it was going to happen, but then you ask Mike O'Brien and they're like, yeah, we never locked that in. And the idea is, some ideas about a theoretical Avatar book 4 were probably thrown around in the room among the writers, but did they ever lock down for absolute sure they were going to do book 4? No, based on what we know. It's those type of situations. But that's basically it for this. And again, I'm assuming that either they're going to say something for the first time about this at New York Comic Con in October, which is not too far away, actually. Like, it's 2 months away, because it's let me get the exact details here. Yeah. So yeah, New York Comic Con is October 9th to the 12th. So it basically marks like exactly 1 year to go. And in a couple of weeks' time, basically, like, it'll still be over a month probably, but a couple of weeks' time, we're going to find out what panels we're having there. I'm assuming we're going to have a publishing panel again, because they always have the publishing panel. We already went over the idea. They're probably going to like fully confirm the Kaia comic, fully confirm the Kyoshi Warrior comics, and the details, and some other stuff as well. Because at that point they might be getting into, they're more going to have to flesh out their 2026 lineup like afterwards, and we might be hearing about like what the next novel is at that point. But they'll have that. I'm assuming they'll maybe do the merch panel again, just because the toy line will be basically officially properly out at that point everywhere. And then the big thing is, will they do an equivalent panel? Like, will they do an anniversary panel again before New York Comic Con? Will it be a Braving the Elements podcast panel? Or will it be maybe the first Avatar Studios panel? There's all that sort of opportunity that they kind of went over. Is there any new info in Ice Wars? Okay, let me just open the document that I have with this. They did actually talk about this. I suppose this is worth having open as well. So yeah, the IGN interview, they asked them about the Ice Wars game at the interview. It's so far away. If you listen to the way Mike and Brian talk about this, I very much got the impression that like they've assisted with the early work on like what the story concept is and maybe some of the design work, but like they don't seem to know updated information on this like immediately. This thing we're not going to see for a long time. They did not say anything of any particular specificity about this. The rumors that we have are that it's maybe coming 2027, but realistically 2028. Probably 2029. I don't think much of this is in place. It's still early development. They continue to emphasize the idea that it is set 7,000 years in the past, and that Water Tribe history is kind of like a part of this. But I actually really like this part. They did actually specifically say the game is set pre-Four Nations, which we figured out because we know what the pre-Four Nations era is roughly. But they actually said that in the interview, which was, I think, a really cool thing to say. For some people, that might actually be like a major reveal, but that's good to know. But otherwise, like, yeah, they we're not hearing about this game, anything of note, for a long, long time. Will I do a New York Comic Con speculation video? Yes, but it's not going to be until probably like late September. Just so we're a bit closer to it. And it gives time for, of course, this gap period between the cons for like to see what we actually get, what we don't get, and we know what is on the table, off the table going into that convention for news. Will I do opening for Magic set? Yep, my plan is to get a decent amount of stuff for Magic. I'll plan it out more when the pre-orders go live, but I'm definitely planning to get at least a bunch of the products, and I'll do videos kind of opening up some stuff. So there's that. But yeah, finally, we get into Seven Haven. So the big news from the convention was this. We got our image, our key art for Avatar Seven Havens, featuring Pavi, Geet, and Jay, overlooking the city of Elora. Again, I don't think we have an official spelling on Elora or anything like that, because I think some places reported it as Aurora, which, interestingly, the internal project name for Seven Havens is Project Aurora. That's what the kind of concept name for the show is. But I'm pretty sure our Haven City here is Elora, based on what they said. That is this place here. Geet is a cat monkey. Jay is an airbender, confirmed, and also mentor. How old is she? If we use any of the leaked information, she's meant to be 9, but I'm not sure they haven't officially said how old she is. So like they might slightly adjust that so that, like, you know, officially she might be 10 when they like officially detail all this stuff, but the stuff we have from the leak says 9 years old. I don't think we have particular information about the age of Jay. And of course, we don't know the age of her cat monkey, of course. Twin avatar thing is already locked in. I'll mention this. We have the description again. This is back from February. And most of the places that reported on this just kind of echoed this because it was announced previously. Here's the official synopsis that we have. Avatar 7 Havens is set in a world shattered by a devastating cataclysm. A young earthbender discovers she's the new avatar after Kora. But in this dangerous era, that title marks her as humanity's destroyer, not its savior. Hunted by both human and spirit enemies, she and her long-lost twin must uncover their mysterious origins and save the 7 Havens before civilization's last strongholds collapse. So, in essence, that's most of the information we have. 26 episode 2D animated series. Book 1, 13 episodes. Book 2, 13 episodes. We're getting 26 overall. And then there is leaked information about like other stuff. I'm not going to go into that too much, especially the main kind of leaked kind of twin dynamic thing. But I'll mention some stuff just for kind of context as we kind of go through this overall. Just because like I do think it's important to follow along with like what they are and are not saying in official marketing versus what's in the leaks. And right now, the only thing they mention about her twin is that she has a long lost twin. And the two of them have mysterious origins. That's all we know on the kind of twin side of things. They also mentioned at the panel, Jeremy Zuckerman is doing the music on this show. And Brian said that it's a different style. So that would match Kora, where they also did a bit of a different style, while still feeling like Avatar. And they're going to do the same thing for Seven Havens. They did mention D. Bradley Baker is voicing Geet, and I guess other animals as well. So that's the situation there. Is Studio Mir doing the animation for the show season 1? I don't believe so. I think we got news somewhat recently about like I think it's a Vietnamese animation studio is working on this show. I'm not sure if that means that studio is the main studio on Seven Havens or just one of them. But that's all we know right now. They haven't officially announced the animation studio for Seven Havens. But when Studio Mir announced that they're working on the movie, it was specifically said they're working on the movie. So I'm not sure if they'll be involved here at all. But that's the situation there. As for a release date, they never in like their official stuff said 2027. But in the IGN interview, the host mentioned the idea that like Avatar's coming back, there's a movie next year, and the year after that there's a show, meaning 2027. Also, Toy World magazine said 2027 for the show, and that makes sense. If the movie's coming out in October 2026, the plan for Avatar Studios has always been not giant delays between projects, that like when it comes out there'll be a lot of it, so that would suggest somewhat quick releases for like boom 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 projects. So early mid 2027 maybe on this. I'm not really sure. And again, this is one where like New York Comic Con is actually more like we might get more information on the show at New York Comic Con theoretically, but who knows really what exactly they're going to do. So there's that. Otherwise, Brian basically like said his usual thing that he says about like why they did Kora instead of a follow-up to Avatar, why they're doing Seven Havens instead of, I guess, a follow-up directly to Kora, is that animation projects are hard to do, they're hard to get done, to be allowed to do them. They're privileged that they're able to actually do any more Avatar like at all. So because it's so hard to make happen, they want each of these projects to be kind of unique and different, not just the same formula over and over again. So they're being creative with this new show here. They want the world to evolve, and that's why it is different. There's so many questions around what's going on with this one, why it has the kind of fantasy elements that they seem to be emphasizing here. Mike emphasized really strongly the mystery aspect of this show is hugely important. They're leaning in that, like, you know, you can see that from the description here. Mysteries, origins, what's going on in the world. So many questions. And that's purposeful. You're meant to ask all these questions. And because we know going in, they've got 2 13-episode seasons, like, we don't need to worry about, like, oh, they're only confirmed for the first season. No, they're talking about mysteries with this 2-season show. If they do more, it'll be some, you know, different plot thread type thing. So that's that kind of whole idea. But yeah, let's get to talking about this, speculating. We'll go in depth on this. I'll open this up here so we can kind of zoom in, enhance, and stuff like that. So let me just make this a bit bigger. So, Pavi. And yeah, the pronunciation is actually quite interesting on the character's name. Like, because I think we've all been saying Pavi for a while, but it's almost like, you know, from the Red Lotus, Pali, but it's Pavi. The A doesn't seem to be emphasized that much in the pronunciation, which is kind of cool. I think it's a really cool main character design. I think it immediately stands out, is very iconic. Where you can see the key elements is that, like, she has a bit of a unique hair color, where it's like almost like navy, like a little touch of purple. With her hairstyle, you know, she's got the green eyes, the kind of light green cloak. So there's the greens because she's an Earth avatar, of course. So that makes sense. But then the uniqueness with her design of having the kind of like pinky orangey kind of main clothing here, kind of unique. The kind of brooch that she kind of has here might be of interest, because like there is a little bit of a kind of crystal gem kind of going on it there, and again it's green. So there's definitely kind of core Avatar theming here in terms of like Earth is green, of course, and I think it stands out. And of course the big element that everyone's talked about here is the missing leg. In this case, a peg leg. In some of the leaks, we of course see her more with a more metal, like kind of prosthetic leg. So that might be something that maybe evolves as the series progresses. This might be her like very early on in the series, but like by the time we get to the midpoint, like she's got like, you know, a bunch of different prosthetic legs because she's, you know, can control her bending a lot better or something like that. And yeah, it's interesting. They're obviously going for a younger Avatar than even Aang, but that's kind of fascinating, where like Aang had the whole idea of he ran away, and that mistake to a certain degree meant he then became an Avatar kind of out of time. In this case, it seems to be more a case of like the world really needs their Avatar because of the craziness of what happened at the end of the last era, and it's just like, we need you now. But she's the whole dynamic of like she's really, really young. And I suppose they're going to play into that as we kind of go forward in the series, is like when people meet her and realize like this is the Avatar. And there's the whole, again, stuff here of like most people are going to consider the Avatar humanity's destroyer, not its savior. And they're going to say that about like a 9-year-old girl who herself probably doesn't know what's going on in the world, or anything like that, because again, literally what happened before she was born. Like that's the fascinating thing here. Like she has never seen the world as it was, type thing. So that's a huge element for her as a character. Like, she's going to have to potentially stop the world from fully being destroyed, maybe attempt to bring it back to the way it was, but she doesn't know what that is. That's fascinating to me. Of course, we have Geats here, Cat Monkey. They got this right. The design is so good here. I think they're 100% track record with the animal companions for the shows. Appa, Naga, Geet. Amazing design work. Cat Monkey is such a cool idea. And in a way, if you've seen all the leaks, Geet is definitely designed where you can see how much it's changed and evolved as time has gone on. The very early stuff, Geet looked like almost like a baboon kind of mostly focused thing. I didn't get the impression the very early design had much cat in it at all. They maybe overcorrected to make it more of just a giant cat in some of the kind of animatic stuff that I think we've seen. And then you can see here, this is more of the face is very cat, but then you can see with the kind of legs, they're more of the monkey elements coming into play. And especially like the tail kind of has monkey elements as well. So I think this is going to be absolutely fantastic. And of course the unique element of like the diamond, like the Rava Vatu kind of diamond on the forehead is kind of like, again, if you've seen the leaks. Super standout design. I think this is going to be so much fun. Like, the animators are going to have so much fun doing stuff with Geet. Because, you know, cats are so expressive with their faces, with the eyes especially. There's going to be just stuff of, like, in the background, Geet's doing stuff. And that's going to be really cool. Not to mention, like, Pavi is, of course, young enough to be able to ride on Geet and hop around the place, which is kind of cool. So, very exciting there. And then our other character here, Jay. Let's talk about Jay. So, confirmed to be an airbender, which makes sense because look at the colors of his outfit. Those are Air Nomad colors, basically. Obviously, the actual makeup of his outfit kind of looks a little bit more like pro bender gear, but I think it's more meant to be almost like a guard outfit or an outfit made to survive in the environment outside of one of the Haven cities. But yeah, like, I don't know. I take it as like 18 to 20 is the age of this character. That's my take on it. That, like, I don't think he's like that much older than that, but I maybe wouldn't go as far as to be like he's only like 16 or something like that. Might end up being that case, but like I do take it to be more like, you know, 18 a little bit. So an interesting kind of approach there of like having like the secondary character be the one who's maybe more the age of like a Kora character. The blue arrow on the chest with like a little bit of orange here as well is interesting. Kind of utility belt stuff going on here. And then the hair, kind of long hair on the kind of male character here is interesting. They both have kind of long ponytails. It's kind of a bit of an interesting element. And yeah, that's a cool design, just like the double kind of tied ponytail here with the different segments. Obviously gives them the room in the animation to, if she's involved in a big fight, for those to come out and reveal her kind of long hair, kind of like with Kora. Same with Jay as well. So that looks great. There's immediate speculation that he is potentially like a Katang descendant. I don't think they have to do that, but it would be a very cool mention, because I'm assuming the way they'd frame it is probably more along the lines of like he's a Janora descendant rather than like going all the way back to being like, oh, I'm related to Aang. That's more of the idea that I'd be thinking, that like he's. I think Janora actually, like, one of her kind of, I don't know, kids, grandkids is probably more the angle I'd maybe want to see, just to get some of that Kora legacy character stuff going on, while also continuing the line back to Aang as well. That would be kind of a cool thing to do. But yeah, I just think it's so cool. And again, if you have seen the leaks, the general sense of what this image gets across it's clear that this is the vision they've had like from start to finish on this project. Like we have I think a few different iterations of this, of like this group of characters, like the young Avatar, her cat monkey companion, her young but slightly more experienced companion in a desolate kind of wasteland nearby a city that's sort of the only protected thing in an otherwise like devastated environment. Like the design language has been kind of clear start to finish, which I think is kind of very, very cool to see. We'll get to the city in a second, but obviously you can see here on the bottom here, this stuff is kind of cool. It's not that everything's gone. There is some sense of plant life kind of happening here, like crystals sprouting up out of the ground, and they're kind of like transparent, translucent, almost like coral happening here. Is it spiritual in nature? What's happening here? And then I've seen some speculation that like, is this like a dried up like river, ocean, lake potentially? And that's kind of what we're seeing here, that in Kora's era this was actually like deep underwater. That could be kind of cool. Hard to say, but like I think it looks interesting, because I assume Pavi as an earthbender could bend this stuff as well. So that's interesting. Otherwise, like crystals are kind of weird in Avatar, where like we've never ever placed like that much significance on them. Like, you know, Crystal Catacombs of Bossing Say, Genomite. Now there's these crystals. We know earthbenders can bend glass. So interesting stuff. And then yeah, Elora. Cool stuff here as well, because one thing immediately is noticeable here is these pillars. The way they're kind of shaped, it looks like that's very much like purposeful. Like someone did this to almost, I don't know, raise this city up off the ground in some way. Or, again, was this previously like underwater up to like about this point here. But you can clearly see that there's like the entrance gate down here. And that like to get up into like the main city up here, you go in through here and I guess maybe go up some kind of staircases or whatever to get into the city. I assume there's like guards all around here and stuff like that. And then yeah, it goes from being like completely desolate wasteland to just, from a distance, like more modern stuff. Like look at those kind of like angles and the way it's laid out. It immediately to me kind of, I think of Zhao when I look at this in terms of a kind of more modern kind of design aesthetic. The pillar here in the middle is kind of interesting. Is this like a, you know, why are the cities, why are they haven cities? What protects them from anything else? Is there like some sort of a, I don't know, spirit force field generator type thing in the middle of each city that protects it from, I think the rumors have always been that like the other element that we're almost missing here is the sky. The spirit lights being in the sky in what looks to be the middle of the day and not over one of the water tribes. So clearly something crazy spiritually has happened to the world. And that's seems to be maybe a factor in what's kind of causing this. The reason why it's dangerous to go out into the wastelands is because of storms and stuff like that. And the city is protected from those storms, but the second you go outside, it's not. So it implies to a certain degree some sort of a, I guess, like force field is kind of maybe generated from each of the cities to protect it in some sort of an energy-based way, which is an interesting concept. Because otherwise, yeah, spirits would just be, I guess, jumping in here. Dark spirits, especially in like a chaotic era, would just be jumping in here. And that's very, very cool. But yeah, it's hard to speculate on in terms of like, I think the most unique part about the show is like obviously the name, Seven Havens. There are obviously 7 of these cities. Where are they located in the world? I'm guessing this one is like the main one they're introducing us to, Elora, is a quote-unquote Earth Kingdom based, you know, city. It's either that or this is maybe the Republic City equivalent one, which is still, you know, former Earth Kingdom territory in the same in the same like general vicinity, of course. And then you kind of wonder like, what is the deal with the placement of these cities? Like, are they just the 7 main cities in the world, now just slightly changed and renamed? But at that point, it's kind of like, if this was a Bossing Say Haven City, it would still be called Bossing Say, surely. So that almost gives the impression that it's not those main cities. But what are we doing here? Because I don't get the impression that like there's going to be like a giant time skip here, because technically we don't know what happened at the end of Kora's era, other than something happened. She is at least blamed by the world for it. Clearly she did something, but people specifically blame her for it. But like, was that the end of her era? Did she die, quote unquote, saving the world in some way? Or did it happen and then there was a certain period of time where she was still active as the Avatar as her era came to an end? Because otherwise then Pavi's age would be the amount of time that the world has had to deal with this situation. As in, the world has been like this for 9 years. Or is it 9 years plus a little bit longer? We just don't know. But yeah, like with the Haven cities, I suppose like, let's do a little bit of speculation here. Let's just kind of say, like, let's just speculate. This is a kind of Earth Kingdom area, and then like you'd be like, okay, Southern Water Tribe 1, Northern Water Tribe 1. Maybe it doesn't have to be in the main landmass, but like an island nearby or something like that could be where we're going here. We assume we have like a Fire Nation 1. And then there's 7 of them. And it's kind of like, well, Zhaofu maybe, Omashu, Bossing Say. And it's kind of like, yeah, Republic City, of course. I already basically said that. So that's too many, of course. So obviously the idea is this could be one of... I'll actually just separate this a little bit. So yeah, the idea is that I guess any one of these could be theoretically what they do here. But I don't think it's going to be as simple as that. Like, I think it would be a little bit like almost boring, almost from a world building perspective, if like we maybe get the map of the world, and it is just like, okay, there's an Agna Kel 1, there's a Wolf Cove 1, you know, Harry Bulkan 1. So I almost feel like it has to be kind of different. But we also, the big thing we don't know is like, in terms of the Cataclysm, has it just like the world map is in essence the same, the continents are the same, but just the cities have been kind of wiped out apart from the 7 cities, or have the continents changed? Has the world like completely changed? We don't actually know what the situation is. And then the idea, of course, is even if you do it like this, the idea is now all of a sudden everyone from a very broad region is now living in one of these cities. Because I'm assuming they're like, Because this is what they're going to have to address to a certain degree, is like, how many people have died in this? Or have we somehow managed to like protect a lot of people? Because there's also the idea as well that like if a cataclysm is happening theoretically, you know, you just send people into the spirit portals. Like that's one way to protect them. If the physical world, something crazy is going to happen to the physical world, send everyone through the spirit portals to try to protect them. Now, they're connected, obviously the worlds are connected to a certain degree, there'll be something there, but like if Kora was in there while this happened, there's a way for her to help people, I guess. And that's the other element of things, like we don't know what's going on here in that regard, because you almost get the sense of like have the two worlds almost like crossed over completely to a certain degree at this point. Is that why like it's like Spirit Wilds type situation? But I'm assuming they probably still want to keep the uniqueness of just the spirit world as a separate kind of plane of existence you can go into. So that's interesting. It speaks to the idea of, like, the portals. Like, are the now 3 portals the things that caused the cataclysm? I hope that's not the case, just because it feels like it's too obvious of a point that, like, really the 3 energetic things are the things that caused this, but we'll see what happens. I also just find it, like, that's such a positive step forward for the world. I don't want that to be, like, the negative thing overall. But we'll see. We'll see what way they go about doing that. What other things will there be? Yeah, spirits is going to be an interesting thing. That, like, they're obviously going to be around, because it literally says here that, like, hunted by human and spirit enemies. So that's interesting. Like, even the spirits are going to potentially blame the Avatar for what happened, which is interesting. But a lot of the spirits just didn't like Kora in any way, so... Like, spirits aren't perfect. They think they're right, but, like, they're not always right, so I don't think you can read too much into that. Like, Wan Shi Tong was wrong. He admitted he was wrong, if you read the RPG. And yeah, the plot is that, like, okay, save the Seven Havens before they collapse. So something is going to happen that's going to be like, they've lasted this long, but they're not going to last forever. So what's changing here? Was it always just a thing where, like, I guess Kora perhaps could facilitate the protection of these cities for a certain amount of time, but it would go away after a certain time? Or, what is there a villain in this series? Obviously people are hunting them, but, like, is there a mastermind theoretically behind the cataclysm and overall? That would speak to maybe an all-powerful spirit that, like, could do something like that. You're talking about, like, a glowworm level kind of threat in terms of, like, manipulating things over, like, eras to a certain degree and having that much power. But wonder what the deal is there. Mysterious origins of the twins. So that's interesting. But yeah. Yeah, the big thing is that, like, I'm assuming each of these cities is going to be, like, multicultural to a certain degree. Like, for instance, Jay, as an airbender, is, I guess, attached to Elora in the same way Pavi is. So that immediately is, like, an earth and air connection to one of these kind of cities, and that's interesting. And the other thing with Jay as well is, like, you do wonder, like, no arrow tattoos. So he's not a master yet. But that's also assuming he is part of the airbender culture that does things that way. As of the Kora era, there are technically other airbenders who didn't join up with Tenzin. And given that a whole era is going to pass, there is room for different avenues of airbenders to be a thing. But we have to wait and see. Maybe he just hasn't quite got there yet. Maybe he's purposely holding back on that. Maybe the quote-unquote, like, true airbenders actually believe Kora didn't do anything wrong, and he doesn't want to come across as that, and stuff like that. There's some interesting ways to kind of go about things here, certainly. And then, yeah, I've seen a lot of people maybe upset about the idea that, like, oh, the Four Nations are not around. But it's like, I don't think enough time will have passed where, like, there will just be nothing about the nations. Anyone who's an adult is still going to be fundamentally like, I come from the Earth Kingdom. I live here now, but, like, I'm fundamentally from the Earth Kingdom. I'm from Republic City. That will still be a factor in that, like, it won't have been that long ago when people lived in a different, like, world and era. And that's going to be a unique element of just, the idea of, like, what we just lost. can we get it back? If it's impossible to get it back, what do we do going forward? Those type of like big questions overall. And then there's also the element going back to 1. I think I mentioned this when some of the leaks first came out. This feels a little bit like a return to the kind of Line Turtle City concept. Protected cities, protecting from people from spirits. And I'm wondering, is there like some sort of an element there, like, you know, was there some sort of a learning perhaps from that history of like, why don't the spirits like attack the Line Turtles or anything like that? Well, something drives them off, and that defense mechanism is built into the cities somehow, which is a cool concept. And that's the whole point, is that like, yeah, there's clearly still elements of the nation's kind of present here, because of course Pavi is Earth in the cycle. Like, so earth bending is we might go back to that, of like the factions more based on like what bending discipline you have. That could be kind of interesting. There's a Line Turtle in the heart of every Haven city. That would be kind of interesting, but we'll have to wait and see. Oh yeah, what sort of time skip will they do? Yeah, so Kora did the 70-year time skip. So what will they do here? And it's interesting because the 70-year time skip was small-ish, because to a certain degree we were surprised almost by like how relatively young it was when Aang died. So I think what we kind of want probably is for like Kora to have lived a pretty decent life. So like I think it probably makes sense to kind of have it be like a full era has passed. So like probably, in my mind, maybe longer. Are they going to make it so that she lived like super, super long? I'm not really sure. But I can see them being like, it theoretically happened like when Kora was like 80. But at the same time, maybe they do want to have it be like, the craziness cut her era short to a certain degree. But you can't do it too much, because while I don't think they can base every decision that they make around sort of just the reputation of Kora, basically, and how that will affect things, I think it would be kind of devastating if they just kind of said that, like, oh yeah, like 5 years after Ruins of the Empire, everything just goes wrong, and like Kora ends up dying like really, really young. That's a little bit where like, okay, that's maybe a bit much, but pretty much I think like once Kora is able to have like a decent life, I think we're going to be happy enough with the way they kind of make it kind of pan out. Because there's a way to make it work depending on thematically what they want to do. My guess would probably be that, given that they're already sort of playing on the idea of, did Kora actually do anything wrong or not, they probably at the very least want her to have a decent reign as the Avatar. That theoretically, before the Cataclysm, maybe she accomplishes a lot of things. Because of course, like, she has plans like, some of the stuff like, say, the democracy in the Earth Kingdom might have happened over the course of her life. They set that up in Ruins of the Empire. Ruins of the Empire. Relationship with the spirits is obviously the thing that like might be directly relevant here, kind of coming into play as a kind of interesting idea, but we'll see what happens. Yeah, there's Sozin's Comet, of course. That's an interesting one. That would be coming up, because obviously it just happened, 70 years passed. So yeah, the comet would come again. 30, well, I guess actually we have to factor in Kora, so like 70 years and then 4-5 years, so like, so what, the comet comes like 25 25-ish years later, 26 years later, basically past where we are now in the comics. That could be something. Now the idea is like, what's that doing? Do firebenders like sort of somehow use it to, I don't know, wreck the environment or something like that? The obviously idea would be like, what if the comet crashes into the planet? That would be the thing that would be the landscape shifter, actually like destroy the world type situation. That might be a tough one though to blame on Kora. Like, oh Kora, you made the comet crash into the planet. I don't know about that. Maybe there's a way. But then I'm also kind of like, do they want to do that? That just like the comet comes back into play again. That maybe feels a little bit too much like trying to make the obvious reference, perhaps. So they might acknowledge it, but I'm guessing there's probably more to it overall. And then as well as that, like the comet's been coming for like all these other eras, and like nothing has happened necessarily. It'd be weird to just kind of, oh, and it also does this other thing. Was my guess. Yeah, the big thing they seem to be setting up in like the Kora stuff post series is kind of like spirit vine, spirit energy technology, as it's the big thing. It's the thing that's going to give humanity the kind of energy needed to have the kind of super advanced technology that we're kind of getting towards. But it also is the dangerous kind of thing as well. So like, are they going to do a thing where like people push that too far? That we get sort of, they already kind of touched on the idea of it kind of being the kind of nuclear kind of like testing almost of the Avatar world, of like, it can be used as a weapon. If you make the wrong thing, it could be something that theoretically kind of destroys the world. Because again, like you were talking about the idea of like, in some cases, yeah, this energy is powerful enough to where you can rip a permanent portal between worlds. So that's something you don't often want to do. But is that all they want to do? I'm not sure. Because I suppose this is where we get into technology. Like, I'm guessing there is advanced technologies in the Haven cities that like we haven't like completely reset, because the whole point is that like we can survive in these cities, but it's not like everything's gone back. Like we just, all technology has been like removed from the world. That might be kind of stretching it a bit too much. Yeah, the swamp could actually be interesting as like a Seven Haven. That'd be cool if like the banyan tree was like the center of one of the cities. That's actually a pretty decent one to do. Because yeah, I'm thinking that might be the way they maybe more go about it. That like it's less about the location of the cities currently, and maybe more about like the unique environments. So this one is maybe meant to represent the deserty, rocky terrain type situation of more specific kind of mountainy parts of the Earth Kingdom. But then yeah, there's a Earth Kingdom swampy area. You could do something like that. Maybe you at least have one of them in kind of water tribe area, so it's at least more of a kind of, you know, snowy environment. Because I suppose one of the big questions I have is like, you know, maybe one of the visual things that I can maybe understand where maybe there is a little bit of criticism is like, is this what most of the landscape of the world looks like? That it's just rocky terrain, bit of crystals, like a little bit of like nature beginning to maybe come back over the years, but it's mostly just like rocky landscapes for like the entire world. Or I'm assuming the series is going to be a traveling show as we travel from Haven City to Haven City. So like, are we going to see these like massive shifts in environment when we get closer to like the next Haven City? Suddenly it becomes like, maybe when we go to the Fire Nation-esque one, okay, it's more like volcano-esque kind of mountainy areas, and it looks kind of more Fire Nation-esque, but the landscape is kind of like crazy, like shifted in that way. And then yeah, you have, this is the snowy kind of Haven one, but it's done in a more kind of unique way where like you can see the different outcroppings that they have here and stuff like that. But then yeah, there is the idea of like, yeah, what are we actually doing here? Like the idea seems to be the idea of Pavie is officially discovered as the Avatar. Jay finds her, implying he's maybe connected to something a little bit more. The fact that he knows to become her mentor, theoretically. Then she meets up with her sister and her little kind of team Avatar as well. And I guess that becomes our overall team. Is that it looks like, oh, that's what it's going to be. It's just these three characters. But actually, it's going to be more like 4 characters, 2 animals, as like the main dynamic over the course of the book. And then what? Like, are we just going to the different cities to... We have to protect them, but like, in what way? Like, is there something, I guess, is there something Pavie as the Avatar can do in each of the cities to assure the protection? Like, I'm guessing she is theoretically the only one who could properly defeat whoever would be trying to destroy the 7 Havens. But then, yeah, you have to, I suppose, like, what is the base of operations of the ultimate like villain of the show trying to destroy all this? Is it out there somewhere in the wilderness? That sort of idea. Is it in the spirit world? That's the question that we have here. And then, yeah, like as it says here, the mysterious origins of the twins. Save them before they collapse. And then, like, obviously part of the idea is, I'm guessing, like, this is like the big thing, I think, is this is going to be huge for this show. Is that Pavie, of course, just for her spiritual growth as the Avatar, would want to do this to activate her Avatar powers, but also she must be absolutely desperate to talk to Kora, to find out what happened in the past. Because effectively, whatever happened at the end of the Kora era is completely defining of the situation she finds herself in the present era. And that's going to be massive in terms of whatever truth Kora is able to reveal about, you know, here's what actually happened. Or if they are going to maybe do something where, like, maybe Kora did make some sort of a mistake, and what way Pavie can fix that. There'll be nuance to it. I'm guessing it's not going to be some, like, super blunt thing where just, like, yeah, Kora actually, like, destroyed the world. I can't see the creators doing that and creating that dynamic kind of almost within the fan base. I think they're just playing on the idea, like they often do with the dynamic between eras, which is that, yeah, the new Avatar often has to deal with the one lingering big thing from the end of the previous Avatar's kind of era, and it just happens to be a bit bigger, crazier in the case of this show, but it will make the moment of make good even better, I suppose, in this case. Overall, like if you've read the novels, like the big Kyoshi Avatar Karuk moment, where Karuk finally reveals like the truth about what he did in his era. That it's not just the case that Avatar Karuk was just the go with the flow Avatar and just did nothing while craziness happened in the world. No, he did stuff behind the scenes affecting things in other ways. He just wasn't super public about it because he, to a certain degree, sacrificed his own reputation to help Yang Chen's. So, interesting. And yeah, this is going to be monumental. I think we've all seen probably some fan art already depicting kind of this moment. It's going to be huge when it happens because it's going to be emotional to see Kora again after all these years whenever it does happen. And whatever way to depict her, whether she looks more like she does in the Kora we know, it probably will be a newer design depicting her as slightly older. Are they going to go full on old? Because remember, they didn't do like fully super old Aang. They maybe more showed that like with the Tenzin scene in like book 2, but in the end of book 1 scene with Kora, they showed more kind of Aang in his prime, I guess. So that's kind of key. Do you think Janet Varney will voice her? Everything we know points to the fact that unfortunately the answer is no. That Janet Varney has effectively already in like convention interviews kind of said no. And that's just part of their new approach, that they're just not doing that. And again, Janet Varney is in a good position within Avatar, hosting Brave in the Elements. And and I think like for whatever reason, like you know, she makes sense, but like being the more respected member of the Brave in the Elements kind of cast overall in terms of like, you know, Dante's there, he does what he can, but it's kind of like, you know, Janet's the one who knows what she's talking about, I think, more often than not on that show. But yeah, that's that. We'll have a different voice actor for Kora, I guess, to more represent the adult version of her, which is fine and in line with the way they're going to do things. Yeah, this is actually an interesting question. Yeah, what Kora characters will we see? This is an interesting one here because immediately people are going to be like, okay, like Asami, like will we see Asami in this, just to get those kind of moments or not? A lot depends on how much time has actually passed or not, and like what exactly is going on here. So there's that. There is obviously, like I was pointing at the younger characters, so like yeah, we have like the likes of like Milo, of course, and Rohan as like the child we saw just born on screen in Kora. It would make sense that like we might see him as potentially one of our kind of more notable characters here, which is kind of interesting. Anyone else like who's super significant? Because if they jump ahead too much, like even in the 70-year gap between Avatar and Korra, they still ultimately killed off like a lot of the characters. So if it's bigger than that, we probably won't see some of them. Like I do think Jinora is actually like a possibility, just because she is one of the most spiritual characters, and I think it would sort of make sense with the type of character that she is, that maybe she is someone who lives like quite long, quite advanced life, just to be the kind of partial spiritual guide going forward here, and then maybe to be the kind of relative connection to Jay as well, potentially. I think that does sort of make sense to a certain degree for me. But they could surprise us and do something like, oh, it's Iki out of nowhere, maybe, as a bit of a surprise. Other than that, like, it's kind of hard to say, because, like, you do have to keep in mind there are things that can happen here in terms of, like, will any character go into the spirit world and basically turn into a spirit and be like Iroh and the Painted Lady? Kind of like, again, Jinora would be the kind of example there to a certain degree, where she might actually go down that path of, instead of dying, like becoming a kind of spirit in the spirit world. That's an option for her. There is the Earth technique that allows you to live longer, so that's kind of an option. Imagine just like Bolin is still around and he looks like exactly the same. He somehow discovered the Kyoshi Lauga technique and is just there, as is eternal Bolin. That would be funny. I'm not sure they'd actually kind of do that overall. Toph. I think if Toph was going to stick around, they would have, I think, planted the seeds a little bit more for that. So that's kind of an interesting one. Who else? Like, and then yeah, you're kind of thinking about like descendants of characters, and it's like, yeah, like what way we're going to do things, because like, interestingly, like, you know, like, there is no kind of romance at the end for Mako, because like they haven't set up anything in that regard. Like Bolin and Opal, like, obviously, like, theoretically, like they could have children. Jinora Kai, of course, is kind of, feels kind of obvious. Yeah, the Aunt Wu prophecy, which is like, yeah, third great grandchild. So that would have to be, yeah, Iki, Milo, or Jinora having like the third child. But it probably would be after that. We're probably talking about the generation after that overall. Kuvira and Batar Jr. That'd be an interesting one, but like, I don't know. Varric and Julie, like, if they have kids, would be kind of interesting to have like that character be positioned as like in a leadership position overall. That would be kind of interesting. Zahir. Yeah, like he obviously, while in prison, can just meditate into the spirit world. So he's definitely in the category of character who could just like live on as a spirit, but like his body would eventually like die, obviously. So, would they do anything in that regard? I'm not really sure. And again, especially with this and the reference characters, you have to keep in mind that like this was not like a massive focus in Kora. I think they did the balance of this quite well in terms of like letting the characters we know take the spotlight, but like utilizing like key characters in the right way in terms of like, you know, we saw Katara a little bit right at the start. Makes sense. But ultimately, kind of like as we went on, the main characters of note was sort of like, you know, Tenzin, Lin, kind of primarily kind of like as we went forward, and then more kind of cameo appearances after that. Iroh, probably getting to the territory of like if you have him show up in this show, like, does it have any meaning? If he's maybe so separate from the characters we know him as interacting with. So, he's obviously out there in the spirit world for a reference if you kind of have to, but getting to the point where, like, do we need to overly make that reference? And then, like, oh yeah, that is actually an interesting point. Yeah, like, Jay could be related to Bolin and Opal, actually. Like, that actually could be an interesting one. Like, Bolin and Opal. Actually, maybe. That could be an interesting idea, of course, because Opal is an airbender, so they could have an airbender child. So yeah, it's either that or it's a connection to, like, Jinora Kai, or Bolin Opal. We have to wait and see. But it is the sort of thing where, like, it almost would be a surprise if he is just, like, unconnected to any character. But yeah, I suppose we'll end on maybe discussion of the art style, because I don't know, like, has everyone else just heard some really odd opinions out there about the visuals of the way this looks? Like, I don't think I've ever heard the word generic used as much as I have online in relation to this image. Like, I disagree with, like, so much of what I've heard online about this, because it does feel like just people are just saying stuff about this in terms of, like, I don't get it. Like, for one, it's a key promo image. It is not representative of the quote-unquote animation style, because of course there's nothing moving. Otherwise, like, if you compare this to other stuff, it's like, this is the Avatar art style. I don't know what people are looking at that they don't see, like, Avatar art style with this. This is clearly what that is. Like, it's weird because, like, people are saying, like, that it looks generic because it looks like like other Netflix shows, and I'm kind of like, well, do you know why that is? It's because since Kora aired, other shows have kind of used the underlying, like, art style that Avatar uses. So yeah, like, it looks like Voltron, same animation studio, that sort of idea. But then even when you get into, like, okay, they're not just talking about, like, the technical art style. We're talking about the actual elements of, like, what's here. People saying, like, what, the colors are weird or something like that, and it's like, what? Because, like, again, like I pointed out, Jay's, like, airbender colors, just a different design of outfit to kind of match the new era. A hybrid animal design that's new but clearly in line with stuff we've seen before. Pavi has various greens for Earth Kingdom, with the only in any way kind of unique coloring in my mind from the image really being the kind of pinky orangey kind of what's going on here. Otherwise, like, this looks like any typical kind of piece of art that we'd seen overall. I'm not really sure the way some people are talking about this. Again, I'll give you, like I said, I think earlier, like, if you maybe think that, oh, is the entire world just going to look like this? It's just going to be like 26 episodes of walking around like a rocky landscape. Like, that might be like, okay, that's a concern from the image that we have. But do you really think that's all it is? Like, I think Mike and Brian would not just be like, there's nothing interesting in the entire world except 7 cities. I think there's going to be more in the environment than we think, because there'll be spirits out there. There'll be actual animals out there. And because of that, there has to be like environments, habitats for those, different beings to kind of be in. It's just that I'm guessing, because the city is a safe haven, the immediate area just outside the safe haven is also pretty barren. And then you can see when you get like a little bit further away, this is when the plant life begins to kind of come back, which is kind of interesting. I think the big thing that might be different when we maybe get to the core underlying art style is, I think on both the movie and the show, is that I think they are going to be doing something maybe slightly different with the backgrounds and the way they're like incorporated into the animation compared to like the general animation of like the characters. They're describing like on the movie the idea of like these deep canvas backgrounds that's like this giant jump in advancement kind of technology, whereas they might be just like, oh, the backgrounds on the show maybe just have a slightly different style to the backgrounds on Avatar or Korra. Because Brian has always described the idea that like one of the main upgrades for Korra was the background stuff and the like improvement that they got there, some of the artists that they brought in to do the background shots. And that might be the next evolution as well. But you can see the core underlying line art of the characters is pretty on par. Like, obviously, when you compare it back to maybe screenshots of Avatar, it looks quite different just because Avatar was like made like pre-HD and stuff like that. But compared to like Korra's stuff, where they're both HD, it's, it doesn't look maybe like that different, but it's just like, yeah, it makes me worried about the discourse when like the show kind of comes out, if discussing one image is already so like kind of frustrating at times with people online. But yeah, I'm excited, and I get it. Like, does this one image just make me like beyond belief excited about this show? Like, it's going to be the best thing ever. I definitely want to see more. I think all of us somewhere probably have some concerns where like, if they take it down this path, that could be an issue compared to what we want. But in general, just like as an Avatar fan, I look at this and I'm just like, I'm excited to see what they do. I'm excited to see more. I'm excited to see how they execute on this kind of bold idea that's very different. And I say that, of course, as an Avatar fan who focuses in on everything. That, like, I don't look at this and see tons of red flags. I really don't. And that's the thing, is just like, I just worry sometimes that the fandom's going down the path of like, say, like the Star Wars fandom, where it's just cracking apart, dividing, and it's just we're having the Avatar G1er thing kind of happening here, where people are kind of being like, no, Avatar shouldn't be like this, it should always be like that. And I don't know. I have major respect for Mike and Brian for always being kind of, we want to do very creative things with our shows, and that's why I'm excited kind of going forward. And again, if you want more classic Avatar, that's what the novels are doing. They're showing you the eras where the nations are the kind of standard 4 nations that we know, with kind of mostly kind of political differences kind of based on the different leaders of various times being in place. Those stories are there for you if you want them kind of over there. We are getting Avatar and Kora comics. I do understand the concern from Korra fans about, like, if we go into this new show and like the only Korra content we're getting is like one Korra one shot a year, I think that is a bit rough. That, you know, there's no big Korra project necessarily kind of on the horizon, at least right now. Now, new book announcements, comic announcements could kind of fix that. But obviously the idea was, when Korra was airing, we had the really notable Avatar comics happening at that point in time, which helped to sort of offset the, Aang's dead kind of shock that, and because they've changed so much about the way they do the comics these days, that could be a bit of a frustrating situation to be in. That, like, yeah, Korra fans are going to feel like we're in a bit of a weird situation where it's kind of built into the story that kind of people in the universe are kind of blaming her for things, which is going to go out into the fandom where the fans are blaming her for things. But the hope is that when it all kind of comes out, we get some nice kind of Korra content like from this show with Korra as the past Avatar, and elsewhere they obviously managed to kind of like do stuff as well. Let's see. Do you think there will be a leader president of each haven? Yeah, I'm assuming there probably has to be something along those lines. What exact way they'll do it, I'm not sure. Like, will there be like almost like no communication between the different havens, and they're just like completely led in very, very different ways, or is there like an overall thing where like all the guards in the haven cities wear this kind of J outfit or something like that? I'm not sure. Because we're almost getting into the idea of like, is there like some sort of crazy conspiracy about like who controls these cities and stuff like that? So we'll have to wait and see what exactly happens here. But at the same time, yeah, they even though we had the comics, they still kind of just did the bold move when they went from Avatar to Korra of just look at that opening to Korra for that first episode, like the cycle of the seasons, the cycle of the Avatar continues on. Like, that's how we learned about the quote unquote death of Aang, was just the intro of the show just moved us on. And it's kind of the same for Korra. Because I do think there are also some Korra fans out there who are, feels like almost getting themselves into a bit of a state over this situation of just like, negativity down like the other path of like, we're so into Korra, we're almost doing the thing certain Aang fans did when we went to Korra, and it's like we need to just be kind of careful to be like just a little bit more open about some of this stuff. But we'll see what happens here. And then yeah, what way will they do the intro? Because like yeah, they had Tenzin do the intro. Jay. It would be interesting if they did Jay to do the intro to maybe keep that going. That would be interesting. Core fans were more open with this no-show. It's an interesting one because like I've definitely seen some people online, like real heavy like Korra stans, who just like, there's a little bit like, yikes, like I don't think you're going to be okay when the new show comes out type thing. And that's kind of the same with everything. Like we know what happened with like Azula, some certain Azula stands when like the Ashes of the Academy comic came out. People can get a little bit overzealous about some of this stuff and cause issues. We'll see what happens. Yeah, like, and then the big question as we kind of come to an end here is just like, are they going to reveal more at Comic-Con about this? Because the obvious questions are like, the twin, so Nisha. When is Nisha going to be revealed? Like her quote unquote team. Are they going to wait until like just before release? Have us meet her in the episodes? Yeah, how many characters are they going to show us kind of like ahead of time? That's the kind of big question. I'm assuming because they already mentioned the twin, like we will meet her at some point, but like, this was an early first look teaser. Are we just going to get regular updates from here on out? I don't know. So yeah, it could be a little while, but obviously the the difference we have here is that sooner rather than later, the marketing for the movie is going to start. As in the early months of next year, we're going to get stuff like CinemaCon, where we realistically should be getting probably like at least a kind of guaranteed first look at the thing, kind of like they did with the SpongeBob movie earlier this year. What is my favorite Avatar comic? Probably The Search. Like, I like a lot of the early Avatar comics, like a lot of those early series. I think the first three especially, like, I always kind of stand out. Like, I'm a big fan of The Promise. The Search executed on a big story, like, super well. And I think The Rift is also, like, really, really good. Like, they're definitely among my favorites overall. Ashes of the Academy, though, the new Avatar one, newish, I suppose, is also, I think, really, really good in terms of, like, the one-shots. But yeah, that's where I'm at on that. But yeah, probably going to wrap things up around now, because I don't think there's like too much more kind of necessarily to talk about. Like, we're kind of mostly just waiting for kind of other stuff to happen. Like I said, next live stream will probably be in a couple of weeks to go over City of Echoes in the usual kind of live stream discussion format. Like, just give people a little bit more time to cover that. I'll have time to finish like my video coverage of that in terms of the chapter analysis stuff. Maybe do some podcasts on that as well. And then otherwise, the next kind of big news is realistically, where did I have it? August 12th for the Magic the Gathering big reveals, where like they basically said in like an article on this is going to reveal the products, mechanics, new cards. Like, this is going to be the big blowout reveal. I'm guessing pre-orders will probably go live like immediately after this or around this. So this is actually going to be a pretty big one here. I'm excited to do a video on the 12th to cover this. We have like books like Beast of the Four Nations is coming out in September. Light It Up in November. Roku novel in December. And hopefully other stuff as well. So, yeah, like I said, I'll wrap things up there for the stream. So thanks everyone for coming out to the Comic-Con discussion stream here. I hope you've enjoyed the discussion on publishing, all this sort of stuff. Seven Havens, the little bit we got on the movie, that sort of thing. When's the Magic set coming out? November 21st is the release date. And there's the Ang card, in case you missed it. Double-sided Ang card. On the official Magic website, so there's that. But yeah, thanks everyone for coming out. That's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.